Greetings and welcome to Behind These Bars, the official dedication of Minoru Yasui's historic jail cell, which was removed from the old Multnomah County Jail to become the centerpiece of the Japanese American Museum of Oregon. My name is Lynn Fujigami Parks, and I'm the retired executive director of the museum. We are here today to dedicate the jail cell in honor of Minoru Yasui and his daughter Holly Yasui. Together, they have left a legacy as fearless champions in the fight for equality and justice, never missing an opportunity to speak out to defend civil rights and to advance social justice. The cell memorializes and pays tribute to the extraordinary man behind these bars. This is the actual jail cell that held Minoru Yasui in solitary confinement for 9 months as he purposely violated the military curfew imposed on people of Japanese ancestry to test its constitutionality. Its very existence would never have been known had it not been for Holly discovering its location through her father's detailed writings and interviews. Min's prolific writing included his thoughts and poetry that he wrote during his incarceration and will be shared throughout this program as enacted by Heath Hune.
Interminable night. It's 9:30 now, and thus commences our night. The long and endless, interminable night. Within this hopeless place of the condemned and the damned. All in! The bellowed command of screws on their rounds reverberate hollowly through prison corridors with a steel-throated rumble and the metallic smash of steel on steel, iron-barred gates slammed shut on clanging cell doors. The lights dim out. New fish in the tanks, fresh from the streets, still bewildered and resentful, are reluctant to sleep. Old-time jailbirds in blankets complacently wrapped are fitfully seeking rest in filthy canvas-lined bunks. There's desultory talk, speculations as to what the sentence will be, conjecture of how best to beat the rap, lamentations loud in injured tones of being framed on a damn dirty deal. According to the talk, how innocent we all are. There are intermittent sounds. Sound of shoes dropping to the floor. Sound of flaring tempers. A short, vicious fight. Obscene jokes. Some indecent stories. Big-winded braggery. Ribald laughter. Lurid profanities. Loud bursts of argument. All the mumble and grumble of imprisoned men. God damn it, dummy up! The kangaroo judge angrily yells to his darkened court. Conversations lag. The muttering talk dies down, and soon the nerve-rasping rattle of ungodly snores, occasionally the explosive boom of a sneeze, strangled coughing, restless talking, a hoarse, noisy whisper, a defiant curse. These are the sounds in the night of 100 lost men who are locked in a cage and are going to sleep. The hours drag on slowly. A far-off clock strikes the midnight hour. Sudden, there's the piercing shriek of a conscious, tortured wretch, protesting and screaming in soul-anguished remorse. What awe-shaking ghosts haunting him tonight. Seeming eons later, the maddening gibberish, the shuddering groans, wildly undulates from the madmen thrown in the hole. Booze-soaked winos and horns set up a liquor-crazed clamor and swell the insane pandemonium of noise. There's the whimpering cry of some youthful miscreant sleeping in an isolation cell along Juvenile Row. Grim shadows on the walls, crazily distorted in the devilish light, remind in fiendish designs the ever-confining bars. Muffled footsteps of screws on their rounds, a scampering cockroach pauses and leers down at me, and moving freely about slips through the bars. An awful mockery. Night brings sleep to hundreds of men. Sleep, yes, but a troubled sleep that brings no peace. And so passes the hours, the horrors, the night in this hopeless place of the condemned and the damned.
As you will hear shortly, the man behind these bars and the injustice that inspired his acts of courage served as the impetus to save the cell. It all began with the Honorable Nan Waller, at that time presiding judge of Multnomah County Circuit Court, who had the idea to preserve the cell. Inspired by Min's legacy, she knew that the building that housed the courthouse and jail was going up for sale. She reached out to share the idea with Peggy Nagai, Min's lead attorney for his Coram Nobis case, wondering whom to contact to take on such an endeavor. Here to share more on Min's life and what the jail cell represents is Peggy Nagai.
Recently, I spoke to junior history classes at Argonne High School in San Mateo, California. Students asked questions about World War II, Min Yasui's case, redress, and the relevancy today of what happened over 80 years ago. Their questions were insightful and thought-provoking. I answered with the best that I could give them and with my invitation and edict about their role and responsibility in furthering justice and building a multiracial, inclusive democracy in the U.S., a true democracy that we have yet to experience. This jail cell represents what one person did to stand up for constitutional rights. It represents the willingness to put both personal liberty and professional achievement on the line, and that one person made a difference for 120,000 others, as well as for all Americans, by stepping forward and intentionally violating a federal law and telling the government it was wrong. This cell also is a physical representation of the very best of the U.S., where people take their citizenship responsibilities seriously and believe that it is up to each of us to speak up and not to say that someone else can do that, or I'm not strong enough, or I'm fearful of what might happen. Minoru Yasui said that what is done to the least of us can be done to all of us. I knew we had to protest it. And the it he was referring to was the curfew imposed upon Japanese Americans that violated their due process rights. If it was done to Japanese Americans, it could be done to any other group as well. This cell stands as a monument to the action that we must take, especially at this time, where anti-Asian hate is rampant, where books about race or sexual orientation are outright stolen from libraries and banned in schools, where speech about LGBTQ issues in classrooms is illegal, where reproductive rights are no longer the law of the land, where voting rights are in even more jeopardy, where transgender children are refused care for their gender-enhancing surgeries, or African American reparations is stalled. We must say no to the trampling of civil rights and to turning democracy into an oligarchy, authoritarian government, or apartheid. People can come to JAMO and see the cell, sit in it, hear Yasui's words, and experience the confinement that Min experienced over 80 years ago. This cell makes the historical and ethereal relevant and tangible. And it is also a place where people can learn that Min Yasui's legacy is greater than the experience in this cell, his case against the curfew, and his work in Oregon. His full legacy is about working across diverse communities, helping form organizations such as the Urban League of Greater Denver, or work with Latinx, Native Americans, Jews, LGBTQ communities, women, and others to promote cross-cultural social justice. Add to that his work for Japanese American redress. This cell is more at the beginning of his lifelong quest for equity and justice rather than the end of that journey. But it is an incredible way to start a conversation, to ask what people are willing to stand up for, willing to go to jail for, willing to disrupt the status quo for. That is who Min Yasui was. That is what he did. He was bold. He spoke his mind. He was not liked by everyone. Why? Because he was bold, spoke his mind, and was willing to do what's right, regardless of the personal cost, from a culture that is oftentimes quiet, sometimes worried about what other people think about us, and don't want to make waves or stand up because the nail that sticks up gets hammered down. Yasui and this cell stand for the very best of what we can do as Japanese Americans, from our lived experiences of incarceration and or the intergenerational trauma from our relatives' incarceration. We can be at the forefront of speaking out for ourselves and others. This is the importance of Min's jail cell and his legacy.
Thank you, Peggy. The decision to save the cell was easy, but the execution of it was not. Answering Peggy's call led to a 4-year monumental project to extract, relocate, reconstruct, and preserve what has become one of the museum's most priceless artifacts. Every step of the way, obstacles and challenges had to be overcome. The right people at the right time had to coalesce. One might even say the stars had to align. Beginning with support from the Multnomah County Commissioners, the cell was donated to us and excluded for the eventual sale of the courthouse, with a caveat that new owners would be required to work with us for the extraction of the cell. Preservation architects and engineers, led by architect developer and museum board member Brian Kimura, were consulted to advise on the process, as well as determine whether the floor of the new museum would structurally support the weight of the steel. Layers of lead paint had to be stripped from the bars, and the cell had to be carefully deconstructed. Only one company in the whole city had the wherewithal and capacity to do the actual extraction and move. And might I add, this was all being done as the country shut down due to the pandemic. Once the cell arrived at the new museum, the work began to put the steel cell back together in space that, mind you, consisted only of drywall. Fortunately for us, we had enlisted the extraordinary talent of artist and sculptor Brian Borello, who was deeply committed to recreating the historic cell in painstakingly authentic detail. Here to share this process is the artist himself, Brian Borello.
I was excited about building this sculpture, which I think of as a cubic sculpture, for a container for matter and memory, from taking something that was carceral, unpleasant, built for punishment, and turning it into something, a bit of a positive transformation. I was invited to participate in this project by architect Brian Kimura, who I think found my business model fluid enough to get in and out to do the extraction, help with the extraction and the construction on a pretty short timeline. I was doing global pandemic. There was some challenges with construction crews, mostly working at night after the crews went home. And the initial phase was assessing the material, preparing it for the fitting and the welding. Had to build a superstructure because it basically was a plywall and stud construction. So what you'll find is that there's stamps that indicate that this was Carnegie Steel Mills, probably came from the East Coast, probably came from Pittsburgh, probably came by rail and then was transported to the courthouse to the 7th floor via horseback and then manual labor to get it up there. So we had to cut it into sections and fit it into a 7-foot freight elevator. The construction of it was a little bit complex because it was hardened steel. It was a high carbon steel component, and I found that when we would drill into the metal plate to prepare for the welding and the riveting together, is that there was actually a layer of mild steel, which we could drill into, and then we hit a layer of high carbon steel, which we couldn't drill through. So I had to bring in the oxyacetylene tanks and do flame cuts through it to prepare for the weld spots. So what I strove for was to try to recreate the cell and recreate the texture and the final finish to really kind of evoke that sense of something that was about incarceration and punishment. And when you stepped into it, you really got the sense of what maybe Yasui-san felt when he was in there, the claustrophobia, the dread, the boredom, all those feelings that you could maybe evoke, that would maybe be evoked in a visitor to the cell itself, right? And that's kind of what kind of got me to this concept I was trying to formulate, where it straddles artifact and art. Because in and of itself, it's a significant cultural artifact, an object, a man-made object, right? But where it starts to go towards the realm of art is where art is meant to express an idea or something of beauty or some emotional power. And I really felt like as I was building this or recreating this, that there really was something artistic being done. That this is, like I said, it was kind of I thought of it as like a minimal cubic sculpture that was going to be a container for matter and memory. And I feel like as it straddles this art and artifact idea, the art comes in when it evokes this powerful emotion. And I think of it as that, when the public goes in, there's an element of shared experience. And I think that's what art does. And then to be able to share that over time and through maybe even generations, to share the experience of Mr. Yasui. So I feel this is a monument to true heroism, to true principled action, and also a testimony to the Japanese-American experience that was that time in the 40s, but also represents maybe the way that we can address injustices and systemic injustices that people are still feeling today, people that are undervalued or marginalized, and how we can make that change.
Thank you, Brian. We are truly grateful and in awe of the amazing work you did. You were indeed the perfect steward for this task. Visitors are now able to stand in the middle of the cell, view Min's Presidential Medal of Freedom, and hear audio of his voice, sharing what it was like to be incarcerated there. It is a powerful artifact that literally speaks to you. Artifacts like this have the power to eternally connect past, present, and future generations. Here to share his thoughts about the dedication and the power of the physical experience of the cell is Min's only surviving sibling, Homer Yasui.
I think that's a great thing that they're going to do, because here you have a three-dimensional object, which is not a thing of beauty, but says something to make people wonder and think, say, hey, this guy happened to be my brother Minoa, spent 9 months in solitary confinement behind these very, very, very same bars. He walked back and forth in this cell, counting the steps to one wall to the other. He sat on this hard bench for days on end. He wondered for the first 6 weeks whenever they're going to let him get a haircut or cut his fingernails. And I think of all the times he must have sit there writing innumerable letters. Eventually he got a typewriter, and fortunately I have a pack rat sister named Yuka who saved all these letters from Min, so we have many, many letters that Min wrote in jail, plus his doggerel, his poetry, if you want. Not great poetry, but it's interesting because it reflects his feelings while he was sitting there in jail, wondering what am I going to get out of here? So I think this is a graphic, three-dimensional object people can relate to. They go inside there, hold on to the bars, say, my God, imagine you're only 26 years old, you're in here for something that was not wrong. It was against the law, but it was not wrong. It was an unjust law. That's what I think. Oh, yes. I think that they should reflect upon why this young man was in the jail. Find out why. They'll know who it was, maybe, but unless they know why he was in this jail, it wouldn't have the same effect, I don't think. Well, I think it's important because the history and the life experiences of the Nikkei in the United States is not very well known, even by our own Nikkei community members. A lot of them don't know much about the history. They may not be interested either, but I think it's important that these things be preserved so that years down the line they can come there and say, oh my goodness, this is what it was like living, like my day and before my days, my father, my Uncle Renee's days, what it was like, how tough it must have been, how different it must have been. So reflect upon where they came from, I think is very important. To understand that the people who have come from different land have still the same desires and hopes that you do. It's very same thing. It may be manifested a little bit differently, the dress is different, the food is different, but in the end the desires are all the same. Oh, like I said, I want to leave them the history of our people, not just me, but I mean, when I say our people, I mean people of Japanese ancestry who came to the United States, beginning with my father's age around 1900, and all the difficulty and the vicissitudes and the troubles and the problems they faced and how it took so many years to, like my father comes to this in 1903, a great land of freedom, He didn't have a great land of freedom until 1953 when he got his naturalization paper, and that was the culmination of his efforts to become American citizen. Barbara, he applied for American citizenship in 1943. In 1943, he was in an internment camp, and yet this guy wanted to be an American citizen so badly. While he's in an American internment camp, he applied for American citizenship. That's unbelievable. But in 1952, the Walter McCarran Act was passed, and so for many, many, many East states, like my father and my mother, they were finally allowed to become American citizens, and that made them so happy, because this is a lifetime of working for something like this, and they made it. Oh, they do. Too many people take for granted. They think it's nothing, but not if you were my father or my mother or my uncle. Say, hey, you work a whole lifetime for that, and it's well worth it.
Thank you so much, Homer. We honor you today as well, along with your beloved wife, Mickey, as founders of our museum and organization. We owe you a debt of gratitude for paving the way and being an inspiration to us throughout the years. And as Homer spoke of the power of experiencing the cell, you are now about to hear music composed using actual sounds from the cell. This truly is the sound of history. Please welcome Julian and Amelia from No No Boy.
Right at first, of course, the guards and so on, very suspicious of me. When we go out to court, they would make sure to handcuff me, which is all right, handcuff me in front, not in back. Go up from the county jail, it's just a block and a half to court. So we had to go down the elevator, out into the street, walk a block, go up into the court, and go into the courtroom. Before you go in the courtroom, there's an anteroom, so they take off your handcuffs. They put a chain around your waist, and they lead you. They put shackles on my feet so I couldn't run. But you go clank, 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 clank. I was locked in 24 hours a day, and this is the thing I was complaining about because they wouldn't let me out to exercise at all. Okay, sure, you walk 3 steps that way, 3 steps this way, 3 steps. It's about 8 feet by 6 feet, and it has these canvas bunks, And I guess they gave me a blanket. There's a potty in there, and that's all. So all you can do is, they used to give us 4 slices of bread, and a potato. No, it's 4 slices of bread and year old oatmeal mush. That's for breakfast. Sometimes they had prunes. It was a treat when they had prunes. And then for lunch, they'd give you a boiled potato and 4 slices of bread. Starch, all starch. I lost weight because the first week or so I didn't eat that crap. It was crud. Pretty soon you get so hungry you will eat it. But if you don't eat the potato, they'll chop it up and make it into something else. And eventually, well, it'll keep sustain life. But the Olivers used to come in about once a month or so and bring Chinese food. Boy, I used to really enjoy that. Of course, reading materials they gave me too because the Olivers would bring it in.
Two-all count, good lead off third. Toss me something fast and low. Dreamt I saw a model plane this morning, flying past the boundary road. Doubled off the Buddhist minister, sliding into second to beat the throw. Mini Doka, dressed in white. Mini Doka.
I went to Minidoka.
Snowdrifts bounce in the moonlight as the evening took the afternoon. Deep in the count, staying alive, 1,000 spectators, nothing better to do. Under diamond cut stars horizon to horizon, some translucent milk glass moon. Mini Doka, dressed in white. Mini Doka.
I went to Minidoka. I happened to be in the corner side, so there's bars on this side, bars on this side, and steel wall behind you. It's 2 steel walls. Steel wall on the top and concrete floor on the bottom. You can't see outside at all. There are windows down below, so there's light in there. But it's a naked bulb hanging above your cell. During the spring, they had the questionnaire, do you forswear allegiance to the Emperor of Japan, and will you serve in the United States Armed Forces? And many of the kids were answering no. the reason they were answering no is they asked you, do you forswear allegiance to the Emperor of Japan? You say no because you never had allegiance. And secondly, the other guys were saying, gee, why should I fight for the country if they don't give me my rights? So all these no boys were being picked up and sent to Tule Lake.
Thank you, Amelia and Julian. Min's daughter Holly was looking forward to joining us for the cell dedication, but sadly we lost her to COVID in 2021. We are devastated by this loss, and here to pay tribute to Holly is Chisao Hata, creative director of the Japanese American Museum of Oregon.
A poem for Holly. On the dawn of El Dia de los Muertos, the ancient ones greeted you. We place ofrendas of golden flor de muertos, incenso, and white chrysanthemums, and osenko on your altar. We stood back and watched the smoke rise into the light of the day. Cupped in our hands, we offered mandarina and kudamono, pan and mochi, feeding our ancestors' strength to continue on the path of Hustika. We swept the ground to reveal the footsteps you walked as you led us on the road of humanity. You stood with your okasan and padre, obasan and abuelos. Their courage to survive brought you to this moment. Their lives of sweat and land nurtured us. Their resilience and hope for their children planted the seeds of our future. Tradition and breaths ebb and flow in synchronicity like an ocean. Gaia, el aire, fuego, misu, tierra. Encircling you we stand, women, Círculo de Mujeres, dancing to the moonlight, La Luna, dancing at a bone, dancing to the beat of our open, wounded souls. Women, surrounding you, teaching us about love and survival, holding us while we navigate life, pushing out our lives of joy and pain. Earth and life, in Suru and human, our hands linked and rose into the sun, flapping into our power, and one by one we joined, forming another circle, surrounding you, greeting you into a place free of suffering, a home with warmth, food, grace, unconditional love. A circle of global humanity rising up, conjuring a pulsing glow, holding you above the light, so you will see the glow of our eyes forever. We join you, my sister, in the solar rays, standing with ancestors, dancing in the moonlight, circling our humanity as you light the way for all, child, elder, animal, plant, and beings, so we can see the path of love, so we will see the way ahead of us and beyond us. Forward. Dale karage, gambate. Together, hand in hand. Forward. Dale karage, gambate. Nunca te rindas. Never give up.
Why are we here? Why are we here was asked of me, and as I looked around to see, I saw a child, age about 3. Smiling she was, cute with a dimple, my placid thought. My mood did rimple when she asked that question, so simple. Why can't we go home? It's so near, she asked with a hint of a tear. Even to a child, liberty is dear. To make the foe suffer anew is an aim of war, as men should do. But the women, and the children too? Why must we stay in this awful place? I dared not look on her innocent face. To say that was because of our race. When men wage war, kindness departs out of their souls, and in their hearts they awaken hatreds with brutal arts. Why are we here? The little girl asked. Officials said army, and in smugness basked. But we want real motives now unmasked. Are we the people, though not admitted, punished for crimes by others committed? To live as free men, are we permitted? Why are we here? Why are we alone, imprisoned through no fault of our own? Someone else's sins to atone. It must not be so, that we might be deprived of our citizens' right to aid in the triumph of freedom's fight.
To close, I'd like to share President Barack Obama's words when he posthumously awarded Min's Presidential Medal of Freedom to his family in 2015. Today, Min's legacy has never been more important.
It is a call to our national conscience, a reminder of our enduring obligation to be the land of the free and the home of the brave, an America worthy of his sacrifice.
We dedicate this cell to Min Yasui, his daughter Holly Yasui, and their lifelong fight for justice and equality. Their life and legacies that are embodied in this cell endure to impart lasting lessons and to inspire generations to come from every background and walk of life. And to share a favorite quote from Min, we are born into this world for a purpose, and that is to make it a better place. Min and Holly have indeed done just that. We invite everyone to visit the museum to see the cell that no longer holds the prisoner, but holds his Presidential Medal of Freedom. No longer a symbol of incarceration, but a powerful artifact to remind us of Min's courage, his fight for civil and human rights, his unwavering love of country and constitution, and of his enduring spirit that could not be broken nor contained behind these bars. Thank you for joining us today.
Evacuation. America, magnificent America, with thine principles of justice, liberty, and equality trampled into the dust, with your banners of democracy tarnished with militant racial distrust. How your patriots of yesteryears must cry out in voiceless anguish and protest against the arbitrary, tyrannical, dictatorial incarceration of your citizens of the West. America, my native land whose love of liberty engendered men like me, and filled them with the unquenchable love of the rights of the free. If freedom is to survive, if democracy of all men is to live again, your high sense of justice and your national self-respect you must regain.